here. The Abraham Lincoln Memorial Park. It closes in another half hour or maybe less. It's from 1840s. That's what she said. It's a beautiful national park. That's the visitor center I'm just coming from. Flag hoisted.
Wait a minute, I say it's around.
Thank you. $48, $49, $50. 3, 4, 5, 6, 56 steps. That's what she said. I'm going to read it in a little bit. This is the cabin he used to live in.
My feeling is Hodgins is 2 miles away. Look for us at the end to walk from here to Hodgins through Get in touch with us. All the time. I'm going to go out and do one quick lap and see if anybody wants to hear the presentation, and then we'll start. I said we might have to end it outside if they lock the door. All right, I'm just going to start, and if they come up here and move us out, we'll go outside and we can finish it out there. So nobody's been here before, right?
Yeah.
All right. Abraham, the Lincolns were only here for 2 years. 1809, 1811, just 2 years. And then they moved 8 miles up to Knob Creek. Has anybody been up there yet to Knob Creek? The grounds are open till dark, okay? If you get a chance, it's only 8 miles away. I really recommend you go up there. Abe Lincoln remembers living up there. Okay, he was only 2 when they moved over here. He lived there until he was almost 8. So his earliest memories of Knob Creek. Jump ahead to 1865 when President Lincoln's assassinated. So 50 years in the future from when he was born. When he's assassinated, we know that there's no cabin here. What is this? There's no cabin. It's just a hill in Kentucky. There's no cabin here. How do we know that? There's an artist from Cincinnati. His name is John Robotham, famous newspaper illustrator. He's hired to come here to draw any birth sites with Lincoln. So he draws the sinking spring. Has everybody seen the spring at the bottom of the stairs yet? If you go down and see the spring, make sure you do that. It's at the bottom of the stairs. He draws the spring. He draws the huge boundary oak, which was right out here. Beautiful tree. It was like, you can see it originally right out here. It was 110 feet tall, about 80-foot wingspan. There's a marker over there now when you go outside to see it. He drew that. They'd heard rumors that the cabin burnt down in the 1830s. So they even brought rakes and shovels to look for any sign of the fire. And he has local people from Hodgenville that knew the Lincolns. They came out here with him. And for 2 days, they searched the whole hillside. No cabin. So what is this and why we're here? It's not a replica. It's not a reproduction. It's not a fake. It is a real, 100% old, at least to the 1840s, typical Midwest pioneer cabin. It wasn't here. So one thing they found out here about 50 yards were 2 or 3 large creekstone rocks that had been kind of puzzle pieced together. Normally that would indicate the hearthstone under the fireplace that you cook on. His name is John Robotham. You can Google and see his drawings. Okay, he drew those stones. That's it. That's all they found. So what is this? You have to jump ahead about 30 more years to 1895. My grandmother was born in 1894. This is a long time ago, but it's not that long ago. She lived with us until 1979. 1895, from of all places, New York City. And here's a mystery. My wife Greta is working on a book. We're in the final stages of a book on this. Working on it for 3 years. We have mysteries, and if you can solve the mystery, I'll get your name in the book. Mystery number 1. From New York City, there's a man named Alfred Dennett, 2 T's. He's very well known in New York. He's got a nonprofit orphanage he started for children without parents. He's got a nonprofit home for widowed women, primarily Civil War veterans' wives that were by themselves. He started at least 10 restaurants that were kind of like McDonald's. He was real worried that people that didn't have a lot of money had clean restaurants to eat at. He was very religious, so it was the kind of restaurant that if you came in for a hamburger and it was on the menu for 10 cents, but all you had was 2 pennies, that's all you had to pay. Just suggesting. So everybody in New York loves him. He's written up in the newspaper all the time. What a great guy he is. For whatever reason, Alfred Dennett from New York decides to build a tourist attraction here, where you're standing. We don't know why. We don't know why. This Alfred Dennett decides to build a tourist attraction here. Why? I mean, New York City is so far from here. I was born in Philadelphia. There's plenty of historic sites between New York and here that he could have had a tourist attraction. Why did he pick Hodgenville? He liked Lincoln. He wasn't obsessed with Lincoln, but he does. So he meets a guy named John Bigham, who had been a famous Western Kentucky preacher that lived here in Hodgenville. And they start a business and they buy the farm. Well, who's going to pay a quarter to see a hill? There's nothing here. There's no statues to Lincoln. There's no nothing. There's no visitor center, no parking. There's ticks and bugs everywhere. So nobody shows up. I wouldn't show up. So Alfred Dennett from New York telegraphs John Bigham, his partner in Hodgenville, and says, John, you got to find us Abraham Lincoln's birthplace cabin, and you got to do it quick, or we're going to lose all our money and go broke because nobody's showing up. So here's where it gets fun. probably where you folks came in if you came in from the interstate or the north. The last big intersection, 1 mile from here, there's a Hardee's hamburger place, a Valero gas station, and a Save-A-Lot grocery store. In 1895, a family named Davenports lived up there by the Hardee's. Where's it Hardee's now? They lived in a beautiful 2-story log house with 2 1-story cabin additions. In 1895, they were willing to sell Alfred Dennett and his partner John Dale this cabin. 1 mile from here by the Hardee's. This picture was taken, they bought the cabin, took it apart piece by piece, threw it on a wagon with horses, hauled it here. This picture was taken about 60 yards out the back door, just like that. 25 cents, you can come visit it. Okay, well, it's still 1895. There's no cars yet. There's no airplanes yet. So if you're the biggest Lincoln fan in the whole world, and you just had to see where Abe Lincoln was born, no matter where, California, you had, the only way to get here was to walk, ride a horse and buggy, or to buy real expensive train tickets. And these folks that live in California, that's a lot of train tickets to get here. So a lot of people don't show up in 1895. And remember, he's got all these businesses in New York. He's successful. Why would he want to do it? Now what are we going to do? Nobody's showing up. I got a farm, I can't farm it. People aren't showing up to pay tickets to see Lincoln's cabin. What are we going to do? Anybody been to Nashville, Tennessee? 1897, 2 years after what we're talking about, Tennessee is going to have a World's Fair. A World's Fair is like a giant, every year they build a giant Disney World for 8 months and then they tear it down and move it to another city around the world. Then they do it, they build a big Disney World again, then they just tear it down. And they build it and do it. That's what a World's Fair is. Nashville's going to have a World's Fair for the 100th anniversary of Tennessee statehood. Our hero, Alfred Dennett from New York, gets the bright idea to take this cabin apart in pieces, put it on a wagon, take it 9 miles to Elizabethtown, put it on the Louisville-Nashville train line, start chugging to Nashville. They're going to display this cabin on the midway next to the merry-go-round at this World's Fair. I'll show you a picture. On the way down there, they get a telegram telling them that the supposed birthplace cabin, wink wink, of none other than Jefferson Davis is for sale. The President of the Confederate States of America during the Civil War. He's also born in Kentucky, not far from where the Bowling Green. You know, the irony of that, both presidents on opposing sides of the Civil War. Same state. They buy that cabin, they tear it apart, they put it on the train in Nashville at that World's Fair, right next to the merry-go-round. The merry-go-round is this little circle in the middle. This is a zoomed-in map. Right next to the merry-go-round, that says Lincoln and Davis Cabin. So, in 1897, for 8 months, there's the merry-go-round, there's the cabin. For 8 months, you can pay 10 cents, like these 3 people finishing their lunch, can't take food in, and you can go in that building and see that cabin, and supposedly there's the Davis cabin in that building. Back when my grandma was only 3 years old. Ooh, let me show you this too. You like riding rides? Like roller coasters around? Wait till you see this. Tell me if you'd ride this one. I wouldn't ride this one. This thing is a 205-foot tall seesaw. Some of these buildings are 6 stories tall. Look at this thing. This is only 6 years after a Ferris wheel was invented for the Chicago World's Fair. This is kind of creepy. That's on the midway right next to this cabin you're sitting on. Okay. Well, mystery number 2. That World's Fair closes after 8 months. Alfred Dennett decides to not bring the cabin back here, Doesn't make sense. We can't figure out why.
Nobody answer the phone, please.
The stones are driving them crazy today. They're beeping like ghosts. Nashville's not far away. Why wouldn't they bring it back here? He decides to take it to his warehouse in New York City and store it. Not exhibit it, store it. Greta's going crazy finding out stuff for the book. The only thing we found out is he's starting to have some emotional, stress-related issues and financial issues probably tied together with all those businesses. So Alfred Dennett, our hero, with all the restaurants, starts to go back. The guys that ran the giant seesaw, their names, I never heard of them. Their names are Thompson and Dundee. But you've heard of what they created probably. They ran the Midway area. They're the two guys from New York City that started Coney Island, which is still there to this day, the music park. They get their start running the giant seesaw. They're from New York. Alfred Dennett's from New York. They know each other. They're working next to the seesaw for 8 months. They say, hey, Alfred Dennett, there's going to be another one of these in Buffalo, New York in 1901. Let's do it again. They do it again. They get both cabins out of the warehouse piece by piece. They put them on a wagon. They go to the train station. They go all the way across New York State. And in Buffalo, inside a real weird exhibit. I'm not going to get into details. This is kind of creepy. European tourists are really intrigued with the old South of America before the Civil War. They want to come see plantations and all. This is 1901. It's mainly Europeans, not Americans. Well, what happened in Tennessee and Virginia during the Civil War? There's not a lot of pretty plantations for tourists to pay money to go see. So in Buffalo, New York, in 1901, in the World's Fair, on the Midway, they built this huge ride called the Old Plantation. This is interesting. This is a huge thing. It's expensive. It's like 70 cents to go in this. Inside the old plantation, they hire black gentlemen who had been slaves before the Civil War to work a real cotton field. They hire women and children to sing and dance and do weird things. There's the cabin. There's our cabin. We're standing up inside the old plantation. I didn't tell you, it's creepy. It's weird. I mean, that's about as far north as you can go without going over the Niagara Falls. That's into Canada. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is a book right now. It's very interesting how the Europeans especially, Great Britain especially, more than anything, Wales area, all they like. Anyway, we won't get into that. That's all I got to say about that. Okay, that World's Fair closes down after 8 months, just like Nashville. Option number 3, mystery number 3. Dennett, they decide to not bring it back here again. They take both cabins. Both cabins are in the old plantation. Take them both apart, haul them to the train station, go all the way back to Long Island, College Park. That's where Alfred Dennett's orphanage is. These are old logs. They're rotting. They're breaking. They were thrown on trains, wagons, built, unbuilt. They now put them in the basement of the orphanage. Moldy, mildewy, damp, salt air, salt water, in pieces, 2 big piles. The cabins are in the basement. They literally shut the door, turn the key, lock it. 1902, that's the end of our story. Have a good day. You're still filming. There must be more. There's got to be more. Okay, we're going to tell you, it gets real fast here, but I'm going to put these books, most of the stuff away, because when they come up here, you don't want us to move fast. So we'll move fast outside to finish. Let me just make sure all my stuff is ready.
Yeah, 100 years of history cover.
Yeah. So I got all my stuff, I think so. Okay. Glass keys. Okay. It's not the end of the story. The story changes to Chicago. There's one name of one person that's the reason we're here. It's not Abe Lincoln. None of us would be here if it wasn't for this guy that I never heard of. And his name's in bronze outside of the door now. But none of us would be here if it wasn't for this guy from Chicago. His name is Richard Jones. He's the editor of Collier's Weekly magazine. That was the most popular magazine in America. You guys heard of it? You've probably heard of Collier's?
Yeah, our relatives actually had one framed in their living room because their last name was Collier.
And World Book. I mean, there was World Book encyclopedias. The competitor was Collier's. Collier's is like families would argue who's the better World Book, World Book or Collier's. He was a Ted Turner of his day, huge publisher, Bob Collier. Richard Jones was his editor of the magazine. Richard Jones is a Lincoln nut. He is a fanatic for Lincoln. This is only 30 years after he's assassinated. He's got Lincoln pictures on his wall. He's got Lincoln quotes on his walls in his office in Chicago. He loves everything about Lincoln. He's the editor of a magazine in the present. He's watching this cabin being torn apart, put together, thrown on trains, thrown on wagons, built here, built in the old plantation. They're in Chicago. And he's sick. He gets sick to his stomach. It's like, regardless of what side, where you lived during the American Civil War, it was Abraham Lincoln that guided the country to its existence, kept it together during the Civil War, kept democracy alive. We shouldn't be treating his birthplace cabin like a sideshow exhibit on a circus. So he goes to Bob Collier with lots of money and lots of famous friends. We're going to look at some of those outside when they boot us out. And he says, "Boss, can we do anything?" We actually have one letter from Bob Collier where he says that Richard Jones came in and was crying, so upset around the Buffalo story. And they researched it. They bought the farm for $3,600 at auction. They knew where both cabins were in the basement, the terrible conditions, the pile. They bought both of them for $1,000. Bob Collier says, "Let me get all my best friends to help build a park here." So they start the Lincoln Farm Association. His friends are Teddy Roosevelt, William Jennings Bryan, William Howard Taft, Mark Twain, Samuel Gompers, Augustus St. Gaudens. It's a who's who of American textbooks, history books in 1900. They're all Collier's best friends. It's like Ted Turner. If you're an important person, you want to be on the good side of Bob Collier because he's going to write about you. If you want to do things good, you're his friend. I've got a 1906 Collier's original one from when they're building the park here. The entire magazine is dedicated to raising money to make this park happen. Teddy Roosevelt writes a whole page article and it makes you cry. I mean, it's so beautiful about why it's the right thing for all of us to do to send money in to build this park. Twain's got a half-page story. Beautiful. They still occasionally pop up once a year on eBay, the original one. So they start building the park. They hire John Pope, America's most famous architect. If you've been to Washington, D.C., he designed the Jefferson Memorial. He designed the National Archives building. His company gets the biggest and the baddest and the best monument jobs really in the world at the time. And they start building this. Here's where the story gets quick. Gray's going to show you this one. These are original press photos of mine. The real deal. There's the pictures of our logs that you're standing and sitting in front of coming out of the orphanage on Long Island. Right? If you zoom in here, you can even see the close-up of Collier's wagon with the man loading it up. Here's another. This one's real. I like. That's a really good one. This is an international story. I've seen an article from Germany talking about these logs traveling the country. Okay, so we're going to go outside. Lena's going to lock up. We'll finish right out front. So we're up to the train trip back home to Kentucky. I told them you were coming, so we packed everything up ahead of time. Okay, let's heck, there's shade over here. Let's sit over here. Let's sit in the shade. Okay, now you saw the pictures, right, of the train. They load. Now, here's where it gets crazy. When the train, they do a tour. The train goes to Philadelphia, where I was born. It goes to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. In Pittsburgh, oh, you gotta show you this. In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 25,000 people show up and pay 10 cents each to walk up on the train car to look at the pile of logs. Whoop-de-doo. Full color guard from Louisville. These guys travel with it everywhere it goes. This picture is the close-up of the wide angle. There's like 3,000 people in this one picture. 25,000 people show up in this birthplace. It goes to Cincinnati. Its last stop is going to be where I live in Louisville. They're going to put the cabin up one more time, raising money in Central Park, which is still a park in Louisville. Okay. Here's where the problem develops. When they go to unload the train in Louisville, there's not one cabin. There's not two cabins. The Jeff Davis supposed cabin. Now a third cabin has appeared. We have no record whatsoever what that third cabin is. Greta should be back here now. She's the girl writing the book on this. The most that we can surmise is that somewheres in the state of New York. Remember, these are old logs, and they're being thrown on wagons and thrown on trains and built here and built there. They're breaking, they're rotting. Somewhere in the state of New York, they had to have some spare parts to replace these logs. So they bought a cabin for spare parts. Here's where it gets weird. We have a letter in bad shape from a worker in charge of building the cabin. It says, and it's in bad shape, the letter says, quote, "We were told to get all the Jefferson Davis birthplace cabin logs and all the mystery cabin logs in Central Park in Louisville, pile them up in a big pile, get some matches, burn, destroy." What? My background in college is physical anthropology, which most people call archaeology, and history. You never do that to artifacts. So my head almost exploded the first time I read it. You don't do that. Why would they do that? Why? Why would they? And it could have been Bob Collier. Why would they be told to destroy?
They want to save the originals. Keep the originals.
Okay, you're right on it. Two things were happening in Nashville and Buffalo. People like ourselves were bringing knives, tearing apart the cabin logs and selling them. The archives has a couple ads from Lincoln, Nebraska, I think it is, for 50 cents you could buy a piece of Lincoln's birth cabin. They wanted to get rid of that. More importantly, remember, guys like Teddy Roosevelt and Mark Twain are telling us to send money in, and we're sending a lot of money in because they're telling us this is the right thing to do. And now, okay, let's say you're Mark Twain and I'm Bob Collier, and I invited you to write these beautiful articles for these people to send money. And now I know there's something up, and I got to tell everybody all those names there. I say, excuse me, Mr. Twain, Samuel Clemens. Sam, we got a problem. What is it? Well, Sam, we have 3 cabins that Lincoln was born in. What? This whole project probably would have stopped at that point. We have a letter from a bourbon distillery in Louisville that wanted to buy this property to build an industrial bourbon distillery. They wanted that sinking spring at the bottom of the stairs. That would make good bourbon. I like bourbon. That would make good bourbon. And we're on top of Mammoth Cave here. Geologists say it probably goes all the way up past Louisville, possibly across the Ohio River. So this is all this water down there goes into Mammoth Cave. And Mammoth Cave tests that every month. Make sure those chemicals kill the endangered critters. So, no more cabin 2 or 3. All right, almost done. So it's 1909. They hope to have all this done for the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. They weren't able to, but Teddy Roosevelt still shows up. Oh, now we're in the perfect spot. We're always to do this. I can show you the exact spot. The cabin leaves Louisville. They bring it down here for Teddy Roosevelt. President Roosevelt was here. You might have saw the picture. This picture. This picture here is just about exactly where I'm standing right now. And that's our 2 heroes. The reason we're here. There's Robert Collier and Richard Jones striking the great poses. We have wide angles. There was a big circus tent right over here with a museum built in it and refreshments. So when Teddy Roosevelt's here, you can have your picture taken and buy the picture. with the cabin right here, right where I'm standing. Normally we're inside, we can't do this. Right here. Right there. Love it. Great picture. There it is. No memorial building. That's the picture of pictures. Pole. Wooden. Look at this right here. That's for the cornerstone to be laid right around the front. When you walk around the front, you'll see February 12th, 1909. That's the last picture before the building right there is built. So, jump ahead 2 years. It's now 1911. The building's finally done. And remember, John Pope, #1 architect firm in the country, biggest jobs. President Taft's going to be here to dedicate it. The cabin's right here where you're all standing. They have to bring it in for the last time, piece by piece, put it in where it's at now. They go to bring it inside. Uh-oh, we got a problem. The cabin is too big for this building. Now this is going to be tough because the cabin originally was, think inside now in the chimney. The cabin originally was 4.5 feet longer. Okay, that's no problem. There's plenty of room there. You saw all the room we had. So first time I read that, it's like, well, what's the problem? There's plenty of room. They forgot something. #1 memorial monument building company, arguably the world then, the Pope firm. They made it just a basic omission. They forgot something that's so obvious inside. It's like, these guys are building the big monuments in DC. What do you think they forgot? Any ideas inside? There's plenty of room in there for that cabin.
The doors were not big enough?
It was only 4.5 feet. So right now the cabin comes here, we'll say. If you bring it out 4.5 feet, we still had all that extra space inside to walk. They forgot. They forgot the security chain around the cabin in there. Simple, they forgot the security chain to keep people. What was happening in Nashville and Buffalo? People were bringing knives, chopping off, selling the wood. If you didn't have that security chain there, so almost every log in that building now that's flat was sawed off to bring it in there in 1911. They were sick. That's why, if you remember the original 1895 picture, and if you look at the cabin in there now, it was taller. They felt so bad, they raised the cabin up about 2.5 feet taller, which in 1954, Walt Disney found out what they should have done, building Disneyland. If you want to make a building or a group of buildings look bigger, taller, and farther away, each story, you make it a little bit smaller. It's called forced perspective. Like the Haunted Mansion in Disney World is a prime example. You really look at it close and it's not as big as it really seems, or the Tower of Terror. They didn't know that. And Disney's alive during all this phase. So, we're almost done. Now, jumping ahead to the future, the Park Service is running it. And they know there's a controversy. So they have depositions. They take depositions of people that knew about the cabin. And back to our Davenport family from the Hardys, they called them in. And the Davenport family said the cabin inside the memorial building, when Tom Lincoln moved to Knob Creek, we came down and got those logs and built the cabin addition that we sold you. But wouldn't that be a nice Disney, speaking of Disney, Cinderella ending? Not that easy.
Wow.
And you can, another good reason why, that grassy, well, see the open grassy by the little reproduction log cabins? That's all private property. The grassy area up there, to the left of that one, when you leave the park, the big entrance sign that says Lincoln Birthplace that you saw when you came in, right to the right of that, till 1961, there was a 2-story log house with 2 1-story additions. That was the Creel family. Their son was the first Park Service superintendent. In that same trial, the deposition given by the Creels said, Davenport family up by the Hardys, we love you guys, but you're wrong. When Tom Lincoln moved up to Knob Creek, we came and got all the logs, and heck, we just live right over there. We didn't even need a wagon. We just drug them up there and used them. Third family to the west. You know what's coming. Said Davenports and Creels, you're great neighbors, but you're wrong. When Tom Lincoln moved, we got all the logs and built our barn, corn crib, and roof. And now back to the artist. Remember the beginning of our story? John Robotham from Cincinnati. They came here looking for something out here, over here. That's where they were looking. They found that those creekstone rocks out here somewhere. They were looking for signs of a fire because they heard that the place burnt down in 1830. The fourth family said, "You're all great neighbors, but you're all wrong. That cabin burnt down in the 1830s." How about that? Off the record, I've been coming here as a visitor since 1979. The Park Service through the years has tried different, how do we interpret this story? Because it's so crazy. Giant seesaws, 205 feet tall, and merry-go-rounds, and Coney Island, and the old plantation. How do we interpret that? 10 years ago, they had 4 panels inside talking about it, trying to, but it was causing, what is this? So, usually when you come here, there's really no one, if there's no one in here telling the story, that's why they call it a symbolic cabin, because it is a very complex story. It's a wonderful story. It's a confusing story. I love it. That's why we're working on a book with it. But it's a difficult story to tell. But regardless, whew. Oh, here's a great ending right here. We just got time for they run us out of the park. Oh, we're fine. Okay, real quick. Those logs, Lincoln or not, those logs inside you were standing by, traveling the country, put together, torn apart, put together. Here he is. There's the reason we're here. Richard Jones. There's our hero from Chicago. The man that loved Abraham Lincoln. Look at him, he's in bronze forever. There's his boss. He went in there with tears saying, Bob, can we please build a park there and rescue that cabin? He says, yeah, let me get my friends to help. Here's some of his friends, just a couple of them. William Taft becomes president. Horace Porter was Ulysses S. Grant's top aide during the American Civil War. Charles Hughes was Supreme Court. Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. Samuel Gompers changed the world. Started the AFL-CIO, American Federation of Labor. Changed labor to this day. Henry Watterson. I'm from Louisville. Our beltway, our interstate's called the Watterson Expressway. Henry Watterson was a Confederate officer. Fought for 4 years against everything that Lincoln stood for. He was a Confederate officer. Why would he be building a monument to Lincoln? Not going to get into it. Wikipedia or whatever. Amazing story. You will love the story of Watterson. Ida Tarbell, the only woman on here. She wrote the first really respected biography of Lincoln. She was here a couple times. We have pictures of her at Knob Creek doing research. She loved Lincoln. Her mission in life was to bring down and destroy, no matter what it took, John Rockefeller and the biggest, greatest company the world has ever seen, Standard Oil. Standard Oil was like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple, plus pick 10 more, all rolled into one. They were that monstrous. They controlled everything with everybody. Why was she so upset? What was her deal? Her family was born in western Pennsylvania where oil was discovered. They were financially, emotionally, physically destroyed by Rockefeller and Standard Oil, as brilliant as he was. I love the man. Her family was hurt. So she gets her best friend involved to build this park. Her best friend is Teddy Roosevelt. She helps get him elected. I'm going to bust the trusts. That's okay. A couple more. William Jennings Bryan runs for president several times. Should have won, but the last one, Augustus St. Gaudens. If you go to downtown Hodgenville, there's a real famous seated sculpture of Lincoln. His top student sculpted that. When they unveiled it, Robert Todd Lincoln was here. Abraham Lincoln's son was here for the dedication of his dad's statue. So, all invited by Collier to make this a park. Last photo. Got your camera ready?
Yeah.
You're gonna love this one. Keep that video rolling. I know I'm going quick. Oh, there's Greta over there. Hi, Greta. Where's Matt? Greta, I need to redo them. I got too many pages. Okay, this picture here. Click, 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 click. That picture was taken on that day. Okay? November 9th, 1911, walking down the front steps. There's President Taft. Almost all these people are here. All those black hat people are in that picture. Except Twain. He's probably still upset about 3 birth cabins. And so I got to keep out of that thing. He's not here. There's Ida in the middle. Note real quick, I'm going fast now because I'm going to run us out. Note real quick, this guy here with the fancy hat and cape, and he's like leading the procession down the stairs. His name is Alfred Butts. Butts, no butts. And he's leading all these people. Well, what's his deal? Is he Secret Service or no? He's very wealthy, and he's a financial friend and just a friend of President Taft. Okay. Important subject when financially things are getting tough here about 1908 and the project almost stops again. Alfred Butts really steps to the forefront and keeps all these folks guided on the end game. We've got to build a park here. Keeps and probably made a big donation himself. 5 months almost to the day after they snapped that picture out front, something happens. December, January, February, March, April of 1912, something happens. Real famous in the world. We heard a whole lot about it the last few weeks. Been a lot of movies on it, a lot of books. April 1912, I know you know what it is, come on. April 1912, in the ocean.
Crash?
What?
The crash?
Not that?
No, yeah.
Titanic sinks.
Titanic.
She was singing the song over there. Alfred Butts goes down in the Titanic and dies. 5 months after they snapped the picture. And he's not the only Titanic connection. Look at name number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a U. Oscar Strauss. The famous Titanic movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. The real sad last scene right before the ship breaks in half. The elderly couple that tuck themselves into bed and go down, decide to die on it. Isidore and his wife Ida Strauss. They own the Macy's empire. One of the wealthiest couples in the country. Okay? They did do that. They chose to give up their life seat to die. They're old. We're going down. That did happen. It was witnessed. Number 5, Oscar Strauss. That's Isidore's brother. Isidore and Ida are helping out here financially. Oscar does not go on the Titanic. He's living, but we have 3 Titanic connections with the park. We did it, and you didn't run out of tape.